I spoke about you in my video today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was a video in Yiddish. No, I read this article. You ever read Matt Walsh?
No, but I heard of him.
He wrote this article. He said, we can't save the public school system. We can only save our kids from it. So then I was talking about how there's these organizations, like these off-the-derech organizations that are saying, oh, look, the Haredim, they're poor. Their schools aren't that good. But I was like, but look at these public schools. He basically said, people say, oh, don't homeschool because the parents don't know anything. He's like, yeah, but the teachers don't know anything either. Whatever. Then I started talking about how I agree with Rabbi Asher Meza and Rabbi Ariel Bar Tzadok that it's better off for these secular Jews to become Christians than it is for them to be non-religious Jews. Like, it's better they should be religious Jews. But then I said, but half the time they become religious Jews and they're not that much better because they just change the way they act, but they don't change the way they think. So then I didn't say by name, but I was like, my feeling is like Dr. Brown, he's a really great Christian, but he's just a lousy Jew. And he should just drop the whole Jewish nonsense and then just be a good Christian.
I'm going to start focusing on Islam.
Yeah.
Instead of debating Messianics, whatever. It's already getting because I've contacted every Messianic apologist and nobody wants to debate me.
I'm sure Michael Brown would debate me in person, and what I would want to do is debate him on the difference between Judaism and Christianity. To basically say what he's preaching is Christianity and not Judaism. Someone once asked him on his show, this is very interesting, they asked him, was Jesus all these things that the Messiah is supposed to do and Jesus didn't do? So what kind of Messiah was he? He's like, well, he's kind of a different type of Messiah. He said that. He's not like what they were expecting. Meaning basically he would say like the truth of the Messiah was different. And a lot of Christians say that. The Jews were expecting a political Messiah and the fact was that the real Messiah was a spiritual Messiah. That's how Christians would argue. Then the thing is, so then it's not Judaism anymore. It's a different religion. It's Christianity.
Yeah,
so
they'll say, what's Judaism? I mean, they'll be like, Judaism is what the rabbis at that time declare it to be. So
exactly. So that's what it is. And I would even say, like you say, that if someone keeps halacha and they just happen to believe Jesus is the Messiah, they're still a kosher Jew. They might be wrong, but they're still a kosher Jew. But meaning he would make it seem like that they're just wrong, but it's not like heretic. The heresy that he has is not that he accepted Jesus, but that he abandoned Judaism. And that's what I would argue. And
I had a discussion with a Muslim apologist, but my phone didn't record. It was so good. Even the guy at the end says that he's considering, or like I almost got him to say my shahada, but it didn't record. My whole tactic is to get them to acknowledge that Judaism is not any less ethical than Islam, and our only differences are theological.
Well, I don't think our differences are really theological. In theology, our issues is Muhammad a prophet? I mean, that's basically
which is a theological issue.
It's not really theology.
That's considered theology, not necessarily the study of God, but the study of what God endorses and doesn't endorse.
Religion is a religious difference.
Right, it's a theological statement. It's not an ethical statement. Yeah. So then I got him to admit that with Judaism.
Most Muslims think that Jews are polytheists. Muslims are just so uninformed about what. I was sitting at Walmart getting an oil change, and there was a Muslim lady there. So I started a conversation with her, and she was like, do you love King Solomon? Do you love Moses? Because we love them. I was like, of course we love them. Like, what kind of question is that? Do David? Really? Like, I always heard that the Jews hate King Solomon, and they hate. I was like,
and they worship Ezra. That's one of those. But anyways, I got them to acknowledge that our differences are just not ethical. That ethically, would Judaism and Islam align? So then I said, if by definition we're just as ethical, then by definition, when you're choosing a religion, you should choose what's older and what's typically more authentic because it's older.
I was thinking about that, except, someone asked me, what's the oldest religion? Is Judaism the oldest religion? And I was like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily a logic. I mean, I agree with you about Judaism, but like...
No, I never said it's the oldest. But
yeah. But I'm saying even... So, like, if you want the oldest... Why isn't it better just to be a Noahide then? I mean, that's because I agree with you that that's not better to. But I'm saying that was what Adam and Noah and Job, that was their life. So why, if older is better, so then it would be better.
Hold on. But it's not that older is better.
Right? No.
If it's just as ethical, no one's going to argue that the Noahide laws are more ethical than Islam. Islam and Christianity are way more ethical than Noahide laws because they require more of you.
requiring more is not necessarily more ethical. I mean, do you think it's more you yourself always argue it's not more ethical, demand more if it's not true.
More ethics, not more ceremonial laws. We hold
how
a positive.
How do you decide what's ethical and what's ceremonial? I mean, I'm arguing from your shita. I'm arguing from your logic, which I agree with.
I think the Torah makes it clear what's a ceremonial law and what's an ethical precept.
Well, when it comes to sexual morality, it's not that clear.
Correct.
I mean, you said that the Noahide laws. One of the arguments you have against the Noahide laws is, like you put in your videos, is like, well, you have that one where like the rabbi tells the guy, oh, you could cheat on your wife under the Noahide laws and you can't under the Torah. So why would you want to convert? The thing is, cheating, of course, is wrong. That's unethical. But an open relationship, why is that wrong?
It's not unethical.
I mean, well, Islam has open polygamy.
Right.
So then it's not.
Right. It's not unethical. An open relationship between a man and a woman that's consensual is unholy, and
right.
According to
so
Torah,
that's a ceremonial issue and not a.
Right. Correct. Right. I never said it's an issue. Now, cheating is
yeah.
different. Cheating because it involves lying.
Right.
So it violates a Torah precept, a Torah ethical precept.
Right.
I think it's easy for a Muslim to identify what's ceremonial, i.e.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing in there. Not only that, but they also identify what's religious and what's cultural.
So if something's older and as ethical, then by definition you must go that path and not the path of the offshoot. Islam is an offshoot.
Except their argument is that they're a restoration of the original. It's the same argument the Mormons make, is that we changed it. It's a silly argument because we can historically prove that they're wrong, but essentially their argument is that they have what's original and we changed it throughout history, that the Jews and the Christians originally received Islam and changed it and rejected it over time.
I mentioned this also, and I said that any area that Islam thinks that Jews changed or corrupted are areas in the narrative of either a story or of a ceremonial practice, but not that they changed anything ethical. Why? There's no new ethical idea brought in the Quran that doesn't first appear in the Torah. And I say the same thing to Christians. There's nothing that Jesus taught ethical that doesn't appear in the Torah already. So it's building on something that's already there. So by definition, if they're looking for an ethical outlet, then by definition, they have to go with what's older if it's just as ethical. Because the guy said, how about the Book of the Dead or the Code of Hammurabi? I mean, all these movements had good things, but because they didn't last this long and they didn't really have an impact to civilize the world.
And also they were not as ethical. If you're making the same argument about the Noahide laws, the Noahide laws are ethical, but Islam and Christianity are more ethical.
They're really ethically stagnant in the sense that it gives you a bare standard, but it didn't tell you to aspire to.
What's interesting, I brought up to Rabbi Siegel what Rabbi Lazarus said, that essentially it's better to, even though Rabbi Siegel agrees, and Rabbi Siegel believes in proselytizing, but he pointed out the flaw in this argument. So Rabbi Lazarus says it's better for someone to be a Ger Tzedek than to be a Noahide. And his argument is because a Noahide is always Chayav Misa. So then Rabbi Siegel said not all the Rishonim agree that they understand that when they say Chayav Misa, it means that the Noahide Bezdin has the choice to impose any punishment up to and including Misa, but it's not obligated, even though that doesn't seem to be shot in a lot of Midrashim. But again, that's Midrash, that's not Halacha. So halachically speaking, meaning a Noahide Bezdin does not have to give Misa for theft. It's that they're allowed to give Misa for theft, but they could give a lower punishment. So that meaning the argument would be that if you're a Jew and you steal, you're not Chayav Misa. You're going to have to pay it back or whatever. But if you're a Gentile and you steal, then you're Chayav Misa. That's Rabbi Lazarus's reason why he says it's better to become a Ger Tzedek. So then the answer would be the Bezdin is not Chayav, even though, but they're justified in doing so. I mean, because there's a medrash about Shimon and Levi that they said that basically they were a Noahide Bezdin when they killed all the people in Shechem.
Right.
It was because they didn't fulfill the laws of Dinim. But the laws of Dinim themselves, there's also a machlokas in Rishonim. Does Dinim mean that the Dinim are only there to fulfill the other 6 laws, or does Dinim mean Dina the Malchus Dina, that every government has the prerogative to create their own laws and to follow their own laws, and those laws are thereby that means that that's the main thing I want to say is that it's not stagnant, that a society can grow vis-a-vis this method that we call dinim, and so therefore there is.
Regardless, there isn't enough on this topic for us to even build this much pilpul on it. For sure, if it includes dina de mechut dino, then it could include anything that a society may consider ethical or unethical, like smoking marijuana. In themselves, we always hold that negative commandments are less impressive than positive ones, right? And that's really what distinguishes Jews from just being a stagnant Noahide who's just told what not to do and not what to aspire to.
It's interesting because now when you talk about the question of negative versus positive, that's a political issue. The left will point out that the Constitution is a negative document and they're looking to create positive rights, and the Constitution only creates negative rights. And then they use that parlance to confuse people, because then they're like, oh, I want something positive, because they think it sounds like positive, negative. Positive is good and negative is bad, when the fact of the matter is positive right means that you have a right to health care or to education or whatever. As a negative rights means you have a right not to get hurt. You have a right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the difference is that we're dealing with religion.
Yeah.
If man,
it's
created
society,
commandments.
The question is, there a difference between this society and the religion? Because I remember former rabbi, he was arguing for Obamacare by saying, look, the Rambam says the Jewish society is required to give health care to those in need. And then my argument could be, well, from your standpoint, you're knocking down the separation of church and state.
I think when we're dealing with the Taryag mitzvot, a positive commandment coming from the Creator itself carries a lot more weight than a bunch of guys trying to institute things that you should do into the Constitution. Right. I'm not arguing that positive rabbinic mitzvot versus negative rabbinic mitzvot carry any more weight. In that sense, they would both be just a matter of opinion. But when God says to aspire to do something, then that's automatically carries the aura of something that's absolutely good and slowly makes this world better. That's the only thing, because we're dealing with the Taryag mitzvot, assuming that you believe that God actually gave the commandments, which I do. The reason I don't think the Noahide movement is too ethical is because it was developed by man.
Right.
From a Orthodox perspective, all a Jew ultimately has to believe is that it was developed by the Sanhedrin to judge Gentiles living in Jewish lands. Then all the Midrashim run with it. Fine, okay, it might be true, it might not be true.
I mean, the Rambam seems to say, though, that you're only considered Chasidei Umos HaOlam if you accept the Sheva Mitzvos V'nei Noach by virtue of the fact that it was given at Har Sinai.
Right. So it's 8 commandments to him. I mean, it's not just 7. The 8th commandment is to believe.
So well, you could say the belief is under the umbrella of Avodah Zarah or Birkas Hashem. That's sometimes how it's taught, that these 7 laws are. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm only arguing for the sake of bringing out points strongly.
No, I think the Rambam's position there is not necessarily saying that it was given as like halach l'Moshe Sinai, but because the rulings of the Sanhedrin are validated and sanctioned within the Torah itself, within what was given in Har Sinai.
Well, that's a good argument. Yeah.
It's the same argument he gives for us lighting Hanukkah candles. Like, why does it say Asher Kedishanu Mitzvotav Tivanu? And there's no commandment. He says because we have a commandment to listen to the Beis Din, and the Beis Din Lo Sasor commands us to do so. The Rambam also in the Hilchos Malachim brings down many midrashim. There also, he mentions that 6 laws were given to Adam and the 7th to Noah, right? So only because it appears in the Mishnah Torah doesn't mean that it's medrash fee. But in terms of the law of dinim being a little flexible on whoever is adjudicating that law, the Rambam talks about when the Gemara says Akun sheshavat chayav mita, that a Gentile keeps Shabbos fully, you have to kill him. But he says, but we don't kill him. Right, saying that even though it's there, at least as an opinion. That's really a medrash in itself.
Right.
But we don't act it out. So it seems like any halachas that seem to be pointing to Gentiles are there figuratively, whether you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
Also, he brings it down with Gentiles learning Torah.
Right. No, because this is a good conversation. This brings up a lot of points. This is like lumdus. This is like.
I rather listen to people have a dialogue than Rabbi Mizrahi to have some monologue where its ideas aren't challenged. This is why my latest videos have been conversations more than anything, because I think that's how people learn. These rabbis who just speak to the camera, but they say the stupidest ideas and nobody questions them. Here, this Ger movement is actually growing, and it's like the stupidest thing in the freaking world. There's thousands and thousands of these people walking around, saying we're full Gerim. So what it is really is a Karaite Noahitism.
In a way, yeah.
Right, because they're saying, that we've accepted this idea that there is a Noahide movement for sure, the notion of a Ger Toshav, this and that, but we're going to completely disassociate it with the parameters of the Gemara and the Mishnah. So remember Roger Grattan?
Yeah.
So he was of the opinion that being a Noahide was superior to being a Jew. He actually broke away, and at least from a philosophical perspective. I mean, he thought that becoming a Jew was taking a step down.